I have lived in Kansas my entire life. 34 years of flat horizons and big skies and storms that roll in from the west like freight trains. I know weather. I know the way the air changes before something bad is coming. I know the green tint the sky takes on before a tornado. I know the sound of hail and the smell of rain and the eerie silence that falls over everything when the worst is about to hit. I have been through dozens of severe weather events. I have huddled in basements while sirens wailed overhead. I have seen the aftermath of tornadoes that leveled entire neighborhoods. I have never been particularly afraid of storms, but I have never seen a weatherman cry during a forecast. My name is Graham Aldrich. I'm a freelance graphic designer, and I work from home in Carver Springs, a small town in central Kansas. What I am about to tell you happened 6 months ago, in late April, during what should have been a routine spring storm. I need someone to know what really happened that night. I need someone to understand that when you see tears on a weatherman's face, it means something. It means he knows what is coming and cannot say the words. It means you should not open your door, no matter what you hear outside. It was around 6:30 in the evening when I noticed Louis Whitfield on the television. I had been working on a project, the news playing in the background the way it always did, when something made me look up. Louis had been the chief meteorologist at the local station for over 20 years, a steady, reassuring presence who had guided our community through countless storms. His face was as familiar as a neighbor's. His voice, the soundtrack of every severe weather event I could remember. That night, Louis was standing in front of the weather map, talking about a storm system moving in from the west. His voice was calm, professional, delivering the same kind of forecast he had given 1,000 times before. But there were tears streaming down his face. Not dramatic sobbing, just silent tears rolling down his cheeks while he pointed at the radar and talked about wind speeds and precipitation. His words said the storm would pass by midnight, that residents should take normal precautions, that everything would be fine. His face said something else entirely. I remember the moment our eyes seemed to meet through the screen. Louis had looked directly into the camera, directly at the audience, and something in his gaze made my blood run cold. It was not fear exactly. It was resignation, the look of a man who had already accepted something terrible and was powerless to stop it. Then the segment ended. The anchor came back on, looking slightly confused but professional, and moved on to the sports report as if nothing unusual had happened. I sat in my living room, laptop forgotten, trying to process what I had just seen. I considered calling someone, asking if they had noticed anything strange. But what would I say? The weatherman cried during his forecast. It sounded ridiculous. I went back to my work, tried to forget about it. Outside, the first clouds were beginning to gather on the western horizon. Around 8, I went outside to check on the sky. The clouds were building now, dark and heavy, that familiar greenish tint that meant the storm would be bad. The air had that charged quality, thick with humidity and electricity. Across the street, my neighbors were bringing in lawn furniture and securing their trash cans. Everything looked normal. Standard storm preparations for a Kansas spring. But something felt wrong. I could not identify what it was at first. Just a sense of unease, a prickling at the back of my neck, like being watched by something I could not see. Then I realized what was missing. The birds. Usually, before a storm, the birds went crazy, flocking, calling to each other, seeking shelter in a frenzy of activity. But tonight, there were no birds. No sound at all, except the distant rumble of thunder. The trees were still, the air was still, and the usual symphony of evening wildlife had gone completely silent. I went back inside and turned on the news again. A different meteorologist was on screen now, a young woman I did not recognize, giving the same forecast Louis had given earlier. Storm arriving around 9, passing by midnight. Take normal precautions. She was not crying. She looked perfectly calm, perfectly professional. But she also was not looking at the camera. Her eyes kept darting to something off-screen, and her smile looked forced, mechanical, like she was reading lines she had been told to say, regardless of whether she believed them. I tried calling my mother, who lived on the other side of town. The call would not connect. I tried my brother in Wichita. Same result. I tried texting a few friends, but the messages sat unsent, spinning endlessly. The storm was not even here yet, and already the communications were failing. At exactly 9, the first lightning struck. It started like any other severe weather event. Lightning cracking across the sky, thunder shaking the windows, rain beginning to pound against the roof. I had been through this 100 times, but within minutes, I knew this storm was different. The lightning was wrong. Not the usual white or purple flashes, but something darker, something that seemed to leave shadows where there should have been light. Each strike illuminated the clouds from within, and what I saw in those brief moments made my heart race. The clouds were moving wrong, swirling in patterns that did not match any storm I had ever witnessed. Not rotating like a tornado, but churning, writhing, as if something massive was moving inside them. The rain intensified until I could not see more than a few feet beyond my window. The thunder was constant now, a rolling barrage that made the house shake. And beneath the thunder, I heard something else, a sound that should not have existed in a storm. A low, rhythmic pulsing, like a heartbeat, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I moved away from the windows. I went to my basement, which served as my office and storm shelter, and tried the television down there. Static on every channel. I tried the radio. More static, except for one frequency that played nothing but that same rhythmic pulsing, that same impossible heartbeat. My phone had no signal. My internet was dead. I was completely cut off. From upstairs, I heard a crash. Something hitting my roof. Something heavier than hail. I heard it roll across the shingles and fall to the ground outside. Every instinct told me not to look, but I could not help myself. I went back upstairs, pressed my face to the window, and tried to see what had fallen. In the darkness, lit by flashes of that wrong lightning, I saw something lying in my yard. Something pale and still, and shaped like a person. The pale shape was a body, a human body, lying face down in the grass, unmoving, rain soaking into clothes that looked shredded and torn. For a moment, I thought it was a mannequin, some piece of debris the storm had picked up and deposited on my lawn. But then the lightning flashed again, and I saw the blood, saw the way the limbs were bent at wrong angles, saw the dark stains spreading beneath the body, diluted by rain but unmistakable. Something had fallen from the sky, something human. I stared in horror, unable to process what I was seeing. People did not fall from storms. People did not rain down like hail. This was impossible. Then I heard another impact, down the street, on the roof of my neighbor's house. Then another, in the yard across the way. Then more, too many to count. Soft thuds barely audible over the thunder, but unmistakable once you knew what to listen for. Bodies were falling from the sky. I backed away from the window. My hands were shaking. My breath was coming in short gasps. I could not think, could not process, could not do anything except stand there while the storm raged and the bodies fell. My phone buzzed. Just once. A single notification that somehow got through despite the dead signal. It was a text from an unknown number. Just 3 words. Do not look. Before I could respond, the phone went dark again. I thought about the weatherman, about Louis Whitfield standing in front of the camera, tears streaming down his face, telling everyone the storm would pass by midnight. Had Louis known? Had he known what was coming and been forced to lie about it anyway? The tears made sense now, the look of resignation, the way his eyes had seemed to apologize. Louis had known people were going to die. He had known what was in the storm, what was going to fall from the sky, and he had been made to stand in front of a camera and pretend everything was normal. I wanted to go outside to check on my neighbors to see if anyone needed help, but the text echoed in my mind. Do not look. I did not know what it meant, did not know who had sent it or why. But something about those words made me stay inside, made me keep away from the windows, made me descend back into my basement and wait. I sat in my basement, in the dark, listening to the storm rage above me. The power had gone out shortly after the first bodies fell. I had a flashlight, but I kept it off, not wanting to draw attention to myself, not wanting anything to know I was there. The sounds from outside were wrong, not just the storm, not just the thunder and rain. There were other sounds now, movement, voices, things that scraped and shuffled across the ground. At first, I thought it was survivors, people who had come outside to help, to check on the bodies, to figure out what was happening. I heard footsteps on my porch, heard someone trying my front door. Then I heard the voice. It sounded like my neighbor, Old Man Harold Timms, who had lived across the street for as long as I could remember. It sounded just like him, calling my name, asking for help, saying he was hurt and needed to come inside. But something was wrong with the voice. The cadence was off. The rhythm was mechanical, like someone reading words without understanding what they meant. And beneath Harold's voice, barely audible, I heard that same pulsing heartbeat, that same rhythm that had been on the radio. I did not answer. I did not move. I sat in the darkness and listened while the thing that sounded like Harold called my name. Over and over, its voice growing more insistent, more desperate, more wrong. Eventually it went away, but there were others. More voices, more names, more requests to open doors and come outside. Some of them sounded like people I knew. Some of them sounded like strangers. All of them had that same wrongness, that same rhythmic undertone. I realized with growing horror that the bodies falling from the sky were not staying dead, or something was using them, wearing them like costumes, walking around the town, trying to get inside houses, trying to reach the people who had stayed hidden. I thought about all the neighbors who might have opened their doors, who might have heard a familiar voice and let it in without thinking. I thought about Louis Whitfield crying on television, warning everyone without being able to say the words. The storm would pass by midnight, but what it left behind would not. Around 11 that night, the sounds outside had quieted somewhat. The storm was beginning to weaken, the thunder growing more distant, the rain tapering off. Then my phone buzzed again. Another text from an unknown number. This one contained a video, just a few seconds long, clearly recorded on a phone, clearly never meant to be seen. It was Louis Whitfield. He was sitting in what looked like a break room at the TV station. His face was pale, his eyes red from crying. Someone off-screen was talking to him, a voice that I did not recognize, calm and cold and utterly devoid of emotion. The voice was telling Louis what to say, telling him to go on air and deliver the forecast as if nothing was wrong, telling him that if he deviated from the script, if he tried to warn anyone, his family would suffer consequences. Louis was nodding, agreeing, tears streaming down his face. The video ended with him standing up, straightening his tie, and walking toward what must have been the studio. I stared at my phone, trying to understand what I had just seen. Someone had known about the storm. Someone had known what was going to fall from the sky, and they had made sure no one would be warned, had made sure the population would be caught unprepared. Who had that kind of power? Who could force a man to lie to his entire community while people died around him? Another text arrived. This one was longer. It said that what was happening in Carver Springs was not unique. It was happening in other towns across the Midwest, other small communities that had been chosen for reasons the sender did not understand. The sender did not know who was behind it, did not know what the things in the storm really were, only knew that they had been watching, had been documenting, and had been trying to warn people without getting caught. The final line of the text told me to survive until dawn, to stay inside, stay quiet, and not let anything in, no matter how familiar it sounded. After dawn, the things would be gone, but so would anyone who had opened their doors. Shortly before midnight, I heard footsteps on the basement stairs, not coming from outside, coming from inside the house. I froze. I had locked every door, checked every window, made sure nothing could get in, but the footsteps were unmistakable, slow and deliberate, descending toward the basement where I was hiding. I turned on my flashlight, unable to stop myself, and pointed it at the stairs. A figure stood at the bottom, a man in a suit, disheveled and rain-soaked, his face half hidden in shadow. Louis Whitfield. For a moment, I thought the Weatherman had come to help, had escaped whatever forces were controlling him and come to warn the survivors, to explain what was happening, to offer some hope. Then Louis stepped into the light, and I saw his eyes. They were wrong. Not the eyes of the man I had watched on television for years. Not the eyes of a human being at all. They were empty, vacant, reflecting the flashlight beam like the eyes of an animal in the dark. Louis smiled, that same professional smile he wore during every broadcast. But now it was stretched too wide, held too long, wrong in ways that I could not articulate but could feel in my bones. Louis said my name, said he had come to help, said everything was going to be fine. But his voice had that same rhythmic undertone, that same pulsing heartbeat that I had heard in the radio static, in the voices outside, in the storm itself. I did not respond. I did not move. I just held the flashlight and watched while the thing wearing Louis Whitfield's face stood at the bottom of the stairs, waiting. It waited for a long time. Minutes that felt like hours. The two of us locked in a silent standoff. The thing did not come closer. It just stood there, smiling, watching, as if testing my resolve. Then the clock on my phone showed midnight, the exact moment Louis had said the storm would pass. The thing's smile faltered, its head tilted, as if listening to something far away. Then it turned, walked back up the stairs, and was gone. I heard my front door open and close. Outside, the rain had stopped. The storm had passed. I did not sleep for the rest of the night. I did not move from the basement, did not dare to believe that it was really over. I sat in the darkness, listening, jumping at every creak and settle of the old house. Around 6 a.m, the first light of dawn began to filter through the small basement windows. I climbed the stairs cautiously, every nerve on edge, expecting to find something waiting for me. The house was empty. The front door was standing open. Rainwater pooled on the entryway floor, but nothing was inside. I stepped onto my porch and looked at the town in the grey morning light. The bodies were gone, every single one of them, including the one that had fallen in my yard. There was no blood, no evidence, nothing to suggest that dozens of corpses had rained down from the sky just hours before. The streets were empty. The houses were dark. And as I walked slowly through my neighborhood, I noticed which doors were standing open. Too many of them. Too many houses with doors ajar, with windows broken from the inside, with signs of entry that should not have been possible. I called out a few names. Harold Timms, the young family 2 houses down, the elderly couple at the end of the block. No one answered. Carver Springs had been a town of about 4,000 people. By the time the authorities arrived later that morning, fewer than 100 remained. The official story was a tornado, an unprecedented storm that had devastated the community, killed thousands, and left the survivors traumatized. Search and rescue teams were deployed. Counselors were brought in. The national media descended briefly before moving on to the next tragedy. No one mentioned the bodies that fell from the sky. No one mentioned the voices in the night. No one mentioned anything that could not be explained by natural disaster. I was interviewed by authorities, asked to describe what I had seen. I told them about the bodies, about the voices, about Louis Whitfield appearing in my basement. They wrote it down. They nodded sympathetically. They told me that trauma could cause all sorts of false memories, that the mind sometimes invented stories to cope with unimaginable loss. They did not believe me, or they pretended not to believe me. I noticed things in the days that followed. Men in suits who did not belong to any agency I recognized, moving through town, talking to survivors, taking samples from the soil and water. Equipment being set up on the outskirts of town, pointed at the sky, monitoring something that no one would explain. I tried to find out what had happened to Louis Whitfield. The TV station said he had died in the storm, one of the many casualties. But I had seen the thing wearing his face, had watched it stand in my basement at midnight and then walk away. I did not think Louis was dead. I thought Louis was something else now. Something that was still out there, still walking around, still wearing that professional smile. The texts on my phone had disappeared. The video of Louis in the break room, the warnings from the unknown sender, all of it gone as if it had never existed. I had no evidence, no proof, nothing but my own memories and the memories of the handful of other survivors who had seen the same things. Most of them did not want to talk about it. Most of them had accepted the official story, had convinced themselves that what they remembered was just trauma, just their minds playing tricks. I could not do that. I knew what I had seen. I knew the storm had not been natural, and I knew it would happen again. It has been 6 months since the storm. I no longer live in Kansas. I moved as far away as I could, to a place where severe weather is rare, where the skies stay clear and the forecasts are boring. But I still watch the weather. Every day, every station, looking for signs. Looking for a meteorologist who seems a little too nervous, a little too emotional, a little too desperate. I have seen 3 broadcasts that worried me since I moved. 3 weathermen in 3 different states giving routine forecasts with tears in their eyes, their voices steady while their faces crumbled. Each time, I tried to warn people, posted on social media, called local news stations, did everything I could think of to get the word out. Each time, the storms came and went, and the towns they hit were never quite the same afterward. Missing persons reports spiking, communities that seemed emptier than they should be, official stories about tornadoes and floods and natural disasters. I do not know who is behind it, do not know what the things in the storms really are, do not know why certain towns are chosen, or what purpose the disappearances serve. All I know is that it is still happening, still going on, night after night, storm after storm, while the world remains oblivious. If you are watching a weather forecast and the meteorologist seems upset, if there are tears on their face or fear in their eyes, do not dismiss it. Do not assume it is personal problems or professional stress. They might know something. They might have been told to lie to you, to keep you calm while something terrible approaches. Pay attention to the things that do not make sense. The forced smiles, the shaking hands, the way they cannot quite look at the camera. These are the signs of someone who has been told to deliver a message they do not believe. If you see a weatherman crying during a forecast, do not go outside when the storm hits. Lock your doors, close your windows, turn off your lights and stay quiet. And whatever you do, do not answer when the voices start calling your name. They will sound like people you know, people you love, people you would trust with your life. They will beg you to open the door, to come outside, to help them. Do not listen. Do not respond. Do not let them know you are there. The things that wear familiar faces are not your friends. They are not your family. They are something else, something that came down with the rain, something that uses the dead like puppets to find the living. Wait until dawn. Wait until the sun rises and the night is over. If you can make it that long, you will survive. But the people who open their doors will not. The storm will pass by midnight. The weatherman will tell you that, with tears in his eyes and terror in his heart. What he will not tell you is what comes after. What he cannot tell you is what the storm leaves behind.